Hi, folks. Richard Avery with Titanium Computing, the element needed to keep your business running. And today we're interviewing Art Gross. Now, I know Art from a whole bunch of different aspects. We use some of his products, but specifically today we're talking about cybersecurity insurance. He's the CEO of InsSkyber, which is a combination of the word insurance and the combination of the word cyber. So when you think about it, or you go to Google it, that's what you're going to be looking for. He's been in the IT specific space for decades. He's seen probably everything that you can see. He's been running an MSP longer than I have. And he's probably been in the IT longer than he's been running the MSP. So today we're going to talk about cybersecurity insurance, why you should have it, what you should have, some of the pitfalls, and some of the other nightmares that come along with it, and hopefully some funny stories. Art, thank you so much for joining us today.
Richard, thanks for having me. I always love to talk about cybersecurity, cyber insurance, and I felt really old with that introduction. But the truth is, I have been in the IT industry for many decades. I've run an MSP for 20 years. I've been in cybersecurity, and I've in cyber insurance for years as well. So it's a unique to have both an IT perspective, a vendor perspective, an insurance perspective. But in today's world, all three of those are really important to blend together.
Very much so. Most people don't realize the three things effectively as a good IT professional, as a good cybersecurity professional. It's just about risk management, whether it's money, whether it's flood, whether it's IT, how likely is the server to blow up? What's my mean time to failure? It's all about risk. Do I accept it? Do I mitigate it? Or do I transfer it and have somebody else like you take that over?
Right.
Now, I have lots of small, medium businesses, and I'm sure you do too as an MSP owner and someone with a lot of experience in the space. And I keep hearing, why do I need it? I already have business liability. It already covered. If I get hit by lightning, all my computers are already insured. It can't cover ransomware.
Right. And I think that's the biggest thing. People, businesses think they have cyber insurance, and in some cases on their general liability, there may be a portion, maybe it's $25,000, maybe a token amount, or they don't, but they just assume they have it. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we see today. Assuming you have coverage for ransomware or data breaches, and then you have that incident, and then you figure out you're really not covered, and so that's one of the things we recommend to clients. You need to do a review, make sure that the coverage that you think you have for the the cyber incidents or cyber attacks really is there for you. And more and more clients are starting to peel back the layers, and they're kind of horrified that we're not covered for that. And it's better to figure that out before you have an incident than after.
Always. I have a lawyer client, and he likes to sit up and talk about how he's not really a lawyer, he's a janitor, and he will clean up the wreckage of your present or your past. But if he has to clean up the past, it's way more expensive, right? Get in front of all of that. So when it comes to that kind of conversation, what is some of the typical coverage points, meaning amounts, that people should be looking for? In car insurance, it's, hey, you look for this for a deductible, or here's your state minimum, or we don't really have state minimums for cybersecurity insurance. So and they can choose not to have it at all, which is foolish, especially depending on their industry. What are some of the normal targets?
Yeah. So I think every business needs cyber insurance, just like in the medical practice, they have medical malpractice insurance. The attacks are so frequent, and small businesses are being victimized, large businesses. So every business is a potential victim, and so everyone should have that. I could say that without any reservation. Maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you didn't have to worry about it. But I think now that the impact of ransomware or a data breach is it could kill a business. So the question of how much is, I'll be a politician. Depends, right? It depends. It really depends on a few things. It depends on your revenue, right? How big a company you are. Depends on how many records you have. If you do business with a small amount of clients, that potentially maybe that attack doesn't as great as if you have a customer relationship management CRM with 25,000 customers, leads, all of that gets breached. Then you start to look at a higher expense. I think a minimum now is $1 million. $1 million, $2 million of coverage. You start to get into the $5 and $10 million of coverage becomes extremely expensive. And these prices are going up on almost a weekly basis, to tell you the truth. So it's not a pleasant thing to say, but it is. It's really, prices are skyrocketing.
Well, I have the rare opportunity to have an expert to talk to. So when there's different verbiage in these policies, and some of them are knowingly and negligent, and knowingly negligent, and unknowingly negligent, and like where's the line there? Like I know I'm not doing the right thing. I'm leaving all of these boxes of medical data in the bathroom. Right. The file cabinet's open. There's especially in the state of Texas, we have House Bill 300. We not just HIPAA that we need to abide by. So I'm knowingly negligent or I'm unknowingly negligent. How does that factor into cybersecurity decisions?
Yeah, well, we're seeing, I mean, just to take a step back, what we're seeing is these applications that used to be, maybe 4 questions. Do you have a firewall? Do you have antivirus? Or are you, backing up your data, are now 40, 50, 60 questions. I mean, they look like a security risk assessment. And if you've ever done one of those, we're looking at administrative safeguards. Are you training your employees? Are you doing background screening? They look at technical, what versions of patching are you at? What is your antivirus? Are you using a next generation antivirus? And then they're asking you, which ones are you using? Physical, how are you protecting these servers? And lots to do with backups and how many times you've restored. So what the carriers are doing now is they're basically doing a risk assessment. Are you protecting this data? All right. And they're asking very, very detailed, questions. So the carriers are realizing we have to figure out this risk. It kind of gets back to what you were saying, knowingly, or what are you doing to protect your network, to protect your assets? So, you're going to protect us. So, you're not going to be a breach victim. So the carriers are really looking closely. And what that's doing is, sometimes they won't insure you, right? If you're not doing the right safeguards, they won't provide that insurance, or those premiums will be, significantly more than companies that are protecting, or implementing much more safeguards. So I think, to just into the willing or unwilling, I think they're trying to peel back the layers, right? In the beginning, it was like, we'll insure anybody. Here's the premium. Now we want to make sure that you're doing the right stuff. And if we come in and find out that you've said you were doing something and you're really not doing it, either you won't be covered, or you won't, have any payments, or they'll be significantly reduced. So insurance companies are definitely, it's almost like a microscope of what are you doing, and we want to find out, so we want to make sure that if we insure you, our risk has been mitigated or at least minimized.
It's really important people understand a lot of those things that you said. Saying that, I talk to companies all the time, and they're like, yeah, I don't pass my PCI compliance test, so I just unplug the firewall, or I unplug the security system, or I unplug the surveillance, or I unplug my thing that I use to remote control when I do the scan, then I plug it back in. Like they don't realize that they're effectively invalidating everything that they're doing,
right,
when they do that. And there's going to be an audit when there's an event, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And if there's a cybersecurity event, they're going to call the HIPAA police. They're going to call the local attorney general for House Bill 300 here in Texas. They're going to call the PCI compliance people, and the insurance company brings everybody in because the insurance company is going to try and not pay out if it's not appropriate for them
It's
to
not
pay out.
appropriate. And I think that's an important piece. I don't think the insurance carriers, are looking to not pay. I mean,
Mhm.
clearly, it's a business, and
Yeah.
they don't want to pay on claims where you told us one thing and you did something else. We would have charged you more if you would have been honest. We would have maybe not provide that coverage if you would have been honest. So, it's kind of interesting when you start to think about it. When the application went from 3 questions or 4 questions to 60, how do you say yes to everything, right? And then if you are saying yes, if you're encrypting all your laptops, you better make sure all those laptops are encrypted, because the one that goes out the door and gets lost and causes that data breach that didn't have encryption, then you told us that you were, doing it, but you're not. So I think clients, one of the messages I like to send to clients is be very careful when you're filling that questionnaire out. It's very easy to say, yes, yes, yes. But they're going to look at what you said you were doing. And if you have an incident, what did you actually do? And can you prove that laptop that went out the door and was lost, you did have encryption on it? It's not good enough to just be able to say that you're doing something. You need to be able to prove that as well.
And just saying, hey, here's my BitLocker password for that laptop isn't enough, because that could be the BitLocker password for any laptop.
Exactly.
You have to be screenshots, talking about the encryption, showing how it's forced either from a GPO or from some other management tool, so that there's no way that it could have slipped through the cracks.
Right.
It's critical.
Yep.
This is all about incident response and explaining to people, hey, if you see a bunch of Russian, Cyrillic, Chinese characters pop up on the screen and you have never seen that before, who are you calling and what are you doing?
Right.
And cybersecurity insurance includes way more than just some IT guy rolling out to try and fix it.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. And I think that what you just said is exactly true. It's like, people think of, you asked me the question, how much cyber insurance should I have? And I said 1 million, $2 million. But what it really comes down to is what the policy looks like as well, because cyber insurance is split into 2 things. One, it's got financial resources. All right. It will cover you $1 million for this breach, but it also comes with incident response, which I think is even more critical than the financial aspect of it, because, a lot of small, mid-sized businesses, they get breached. They don't know who to call. And if they call their IT or MSP, they still struggle with some of this incident response because they're good at technology. They're not good at, handling data breaches. So some of the services, usually you have a breach coach, which is a law firm. They act as the kind of the first contact. Usually that's a 24-hour hotline that if you have a breach, you call them. This law firm or breach coach or breach quarterback then starts to look at, okay, did we mitigate the breach? Then the big question is, what was breached? And that's where the data forensics comes in. And having that data forensics company to figure out who was breached, who was impacted, which is really important. And we'll talk about breach notification, but I always say it's more important to figure out what wasn't breached than what was breached, because if you have a breach, you have 25,000 customers. Do you want to tell everyone if only 5 were impacted? So figuring that out, unfortunately, that's expensive. It's dedicated resources. It's people with extreme, knowledge of data forensics. It's not your typical IT MSP. So, doing that data forensics, those costs add up. Breach notification. And if you think about it, all states have breach notification laws. Each one is different. Some you have to notify 90 days, some 24 hours, some definition of what PII, personal identifiable information, is. They're all different. So if you have a breach and you have customers in multiple states, you need a law firm that knows what the requirements are, how to do the breach notification letter, all of that stuff. It becomes very expensive and very time consuming. Then as soon as you let customers know that there was a breach, they're not very happy, right? So then you have to deal with reputation damage or reputation management. Are they saying things about your company on social media? Are they leaving? And what you want to get in front of that. So part of a cyber insurance policy is that reputation management. And then a lot of times, you could set up help call centers. Affected individuals can call. Insurance will help you with that. And then there's also credit monitoring, which could actually, those costs could add up depending on the size of the pool of individuals that were breached. So in summary, cyber insurance provides financial resources. It provides breach coach, data forensics, reputation management, and breach notification, as well as credit monitoring. So it's a combination of all of that. And that's kind of why I say every business needs it, because if this happens to you, who does it? You never want to start Googling, data forensics in the middle of a ransomware attack. I mean, that's, you need to make sure that you're ready to pick up that phone and get that response immediately.
I don't think anybody's going to Google data forensics in the middle of a ransomware attack, but that's a different, that's like, the challenge of getting people to Google managed service provider for MSP. Nobody searches for that. They search for
Exactly.
antivirus on my laptop. But so one of the things that you mentioned there, the whole concept of insurance is to make you whole after the event, right? You get in a car accident. Hey, we're going to put you back on the road, or pay you out, or whatever the vehicle damage was. Maybe we get you a rental car so you can drive around. You can maybe get homeowners insurance. If you have a fire, they put you in a hotel. The whole point of it is to make you whole before the event, and it's all of those other pieces that most people don't realize is part of cybersecurity insurance, and it's really important to call that out. So because we're talking about a different size, with homeowners insurance, I have a house, my house is worth $1 million. How much insurance do I need? Well, I probably need $1 million of insurance, but I have a bunch of stuff in the house. Most people aren't thinking about that. Maybe I need riders. Oh, I've got some precious metals. I've got some fancy art. I've got 3 vintage Corvettes in the garage. Right? If those go down with it, right, I'm in trouble. Now, so should they be calculating cybersecurity insurance based off the size of the business, or is it the liability that exists off of the data breach? Nobody wants to be on the HHS wall of shame, right? For more than 500 records forever. But where's that calculation? How should they be determining the risk that they should be buying?
That's a great question, because we actually created a calculator to do that based on the number of records, right? So if you have a breach with 1,000, we look at the components that I said. This is what it will cost using real insurance data. We created this calculator that if you have 1,000 records, this is what legal costs will be. This will be what breach notification, data forensics, credit monitoring. So I think companies should be looking at this. Looking in their database, their CRM, their EHR, their, how many customers they have, and say, if I'm breached, this is, let's put in 25,000. That's in my CRM, maybe it's sitting in Salesforce or something like that. And then when you see that comes back at $600,000-700,000 without any fines, without any of the other things that go along with it, you start to say, I need at least that. Plus, the other big piece of a data breach, and especially like ransomware. So you have that number, but what if you have ransomware and you can't sell your goods? You're down for a week, right? With the other piece of it, okay, that's the components that you'll need to pay for, right? What I talked about, the calculator will look at the legal and forensics. But what if you can't collect revenue? That system's down for 3 days and you can't sell anything. How much do you make in a year, and divide it by the days? So every day, you could be losing 25,000, 50,000, 100,000, whatever, it depends on your annual revenue, weekly revenue. So you add multiple aspects. You have, okay, this is the breach response. This is lost revenue, and some insurance policies will help you pay for lost revenue. So I think there's multiple factors in this that, when you put it all together, and if you're in a regulated industry, what if I get fined? What could that fine look like? then all of a sudden you start to say, millions enough, 4 million, 5 million is what I really need. So I think the answer in a there's multiple components to figure out that number.
Just like car insurance, right? I've got this year, this make, this model, it's an antique, it's got this much mileage on it. How much is it to replace? And if your business is this much instead of this much, then that's how much you should have.
And it's just like car insurance in the sense there's lots of sublimits also, right? Like, okay, that $1 million policy may only cover $100,000 of a ransomware, payment, or it may only cover $250,000 of data forensics. So I think it's really important. It's not just the top number, okay, it's $1 million, but what are the sublimits, the components of it, and how much will it pay? I mean, we've seen $1 million policies that only cover $10,000 of social engineering. That's not a very good policy, right? You think you have $1 million, one of your employees gets tricked and wires money, and then it only covers $10,000. So, you really have to do an analysis figuring out what do each of those components. It's not just the top line, but each of what, the payments will be for each of the sublimits. So important to take a, holistic view of that policy.
And everybody wants to transfer that risk, right? The insurance company is going to want to transfer that risk to somebody else or go after them, right? In personal injury or in car insurance or in homeowners insurance, they're like, oh, hey, we found out that the HVAC has had a faulty installer switch. There was a recall on it. The HVAC company never reached out to you. We're going to go sue the HVAC company because it was their responsibility. They got notified. The homeowner shouldn't have gotten notified. You should have reached out to them. They're going to try and push that off. Now, and those sub limits are really important because I love doing social engineering attacks. I mean, that's some of the, usually that's like the cutoff. No social engineering attacks are allowed in a pen test because people fall for it really fast, really easy. I have another video of me wearing a Target shirt that I bought on eBay and just be like, oh, hey, I need to walk in. I need to see the network closet, let me in. Or, hey, I got in and the cyber breach came because I got in the back door and the back door wasn't installed right. And it was easy for me to touch the machines and gain access. And then you have a breach because somebody physically didn't secure the environment. So getting into those nuts and bolts is really important for an organization, understanding that process and how that goes.
Yep.
Now, ransomware is exploding. I mean, we're talking, Optos and their state of cybercrime report said that we should be at $4 trillion of damages this year, 4 to 5 trillion. I don't know if we're going to get hit 5, but still, it's crazy. The FBI reported in their 2020 statistics they released the other month that just Texas, just FBI, just their cases, they were up to $313 million of damages.
Yep.
Just the cases the FBI touched.
Yep.
So what are you seeing on the front lines of interacting with customers? How many are calling you frantic trying to get cybersecurity insurance after the fact? Yep. And how often are you seeing the breaches? Is it always the same players? Or how many players are you seeing? Tell us, share some stories.
Yeah. So just to hit the $3 trillion, if you think about it, if you put together Apple's revenue, Google's revenue, Tesla, you don't even hit $1 trillion of revenue. All right. Or, and the cybercrime ecosystem or economy is bigger than worldwide, drug traffic. I mean, they're hiring the best, the smartest, the brightest developers and social engineering, psychology, people. So we're up against some amazing amount of firepower. All right. And I think what you're starting to see is the ransomware attacks are skyrocketing. We're seeing a lot of small businesses getting hit. They in small businesses, the problem is they don't think they're going to be victimized. And this is, because when you don't think you're going to be victimized, you don't do anything, right? You say, it's not going to happen to me. But we definitely are seeing smaller companies get attacked. We're starting, and the thing is, the unfortunate part is a lot of businesses that are not prepared really face a crisis where they could go out of business. It could literally kill them. They had, maybe they had a backup and they were backing up to a USB drive. And, if they don't pay that ransom, and you don't ever know if you're going to get your data back, you could literally be out of business. And if you've never talked to a business owner that is in that, you have never heard fear. You have never heard such desperation. Like, I've spent 20 years working on this business, and if we don't get this data back, it's, it could be over. I mean, I've heard doctors cry, I've heard lawyers cry. And I always say, if I could bottle that, that fear, that desperation, and just somebody takes a sip for 5 seconds and feels that pain, you can sell enough cybersecurity or cyber insurance. And I mean, that's the truth. It's people, and when you're in that ransomware attack and you're looking at potentially losing your business, it's horrifying, I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
I was in a penetration test 2 weeks ago. A compliance officer friend of mine asked me to go take a look at this client's environment. He just does the HIPAA, House Bill 300, OSHA stuff. And he invited us to come in and check us out and do some things. And the dentist who owned the practice was really concerned about his security, because suddenly he some tool he installed told him that his driver's license was on the dark web and showed him passwords. And he's like, man, like, why isn't my MSP talking to me about these things?
Right. So,
the referral comes in, I come in and I sit in his office and I scan his network, and it's just a nightmare. It's just an MSP that's been cashing checks, not doing anything from a cyber standpoint, probably not because it's malicious, but because they don't know, right? It's just IT people being IT people, not IT people being cybersecurity people or cybersecurity insurance people. The people are experts in their own fields. But talking to him so that he could resonate that pain when I'm like, hey, this is where you're in. His response was, this is not tolerable. I can't not know. I can't not be secure.
Yep.
And I said to him, this is your baby. This is your business. You built this up. This is your retirement. You're planning on exiting this at some point in time in your life, because you're probably not planning on working on teeth till you're 98. So like that, someone who has built something from scratch and they remember the clawing and the dragging to get their business to some, even in the black, is monumental. And have somebody say, hey, this is where I'm at. I have customers that call me all the time and they're like, hey, where are we at? Are we good? And I'm like, sure, here's some screenshots. Here's some reports. Because if you call your IT or your MSP, be like, hey, are we good? Are our backups? Yeah, your backups are fine.
Yeah.
Sure, they're fine. Yeah. Oh, okay. Show me a screenshot, right? I tell people that you should ask for a screenshot of your last month's backups, and you have to provide it to an insurance company.
What's really interesting, and I read something, and it's most people who pay ransoms actually have their data backed up. The problem is they've never done a restore and figured out that it takes, if you have terabytes of data, it could take 2 weeks to move all that data back down, and you're not selling anything. So when was the last time you tried to restore that data? Backing it up is good, and maybe it's in the cloud, but how quickly can you get it restored, get your systems up and running? Businesses say, I can't make payroll if we don't sell this whole week or the next 2 weeks. So they say it's, I'll pay $25,000, $50,000, get us back up and running. So, it's all of that. Where are we? Yes. Well, make sure that you're backing up, make sure you can restore, make sure, that if you do get impacted, you can minimize that, and you have that insurance, you have that safety net. So, what's very interesting, you were talking about, you work 20 years. What's the most scary part is you could work 20 years and all it takes is one employee to fall for a phishing scam. Ransomware now infiltrates your network, spreads throughout, and now you're faced with a life or death business, decision. What do we do here? It is extremely scary. People don't realize how fragile. Like, you get to the point where I got lots of customers, I can lose a customer, we're still okay. But if you're a ransomware victim, it could all just go away. And I think the more that we can educate clients about that, the more that they'll implement more cybersecurity and make sure their data is backed up, but also, cyber insurance to make sure that you have some resiliencies, you have, funds, you have, incident response, and minimize the damage.
Having experts who know what they're doing in those events are critical because the time is of essence.
Yep.
Just like we had to sit down with one of our clients talking exactly about that thing. And I have a video about backup disaster recovery and what you have to do and why. Because of that, sitting down with someone and say, hey, if lightning strikes right now and I'm standing here with a backup server, I have your backup in my hand, I am ready to go.
Yep.
You have 10 terabytes of data. It's going to take me all day just to transfer it via USB 3. Yep. Right? Do you need to install 10 gigabit? Do you need to have a backup server? Do we need to have a full backup virtual machine offsite?
Yep.
How much do you make? How are we going to mitigate the risk? Are we going to accept the risk? Yep. Or are we going to transfer it? And the transferring can be by a server that's in the closet that's has the data copied to it every couple of months. Then we've got backup offsite. Now we're just grabbing that last 10 or 100 gigs and updating, right? But then when I sit down and I talk to business owners about that, they're like, why are you the first person to have this conversation with me? I've had IT companies work for years. Exactly.
The other piece is, I think, IT companies and MSPs, they do a good job backing up data, and restoring data. A lot of companies are doing exactly what we were talking about. The problem comes also is if you're using a cloud server or for something, like say it's an electronic health records or a CRM, if that is ransomed, there's nothing anyone can do. You're an IT person, you can't bring Salesforce back up. I'm not saying Salesforce had a problem, but you can't bring Salesforce up yourself. You can't bring electronic health record that's hosted in the cloud. So you have to do that calculation. What if I can't use that software? Maybe it's a payroll system. Maybe it's a point of service collecting money or your credit card process. If that doesn't work and you can't collect that revenue, what are you going to do? So if you're not doing those calculations of figuring out if an extended ransomware attack on your system or a cloud system, if you haven't done that, you need to do that immediately and figure out, okay, if I can't sell and I can't make X amount of money in 2 weeks, how does this impact my business? And I think that drives you to saying, okay, I need that level of protection from a financial resource at the very least.
I was doing information assurance and information security for DoD projects. And while I was doing that, we were doing desk, tabletop exercises are critical. Sitting down and talking about those things. Hey, do you have more than one credit card processor? Right. How fast can you swap? Right? If your credit card processor gets compromised and you can't process because they're out of business, yep. Right? There was of all the attack, the things that keep you and I up at night, right? The MSP that had like 210 dentist offices in Colorado that got ransomware and then pushed ransomware to all their clients. The Kaseya, incident. Those are the things that terrify us,
right?
Because it impacts all of our customers, and we're worried about something like that large of an event.
Yep.
Sitting down with your business owner and saying, hey, do you have another bank account? Do you have another processor? Do you have another way to process? Do you have another ERM? You could electronic records management, health management software you could pivot to, and then determine what the costs are. And if the costs are unacceptable, right? Like some people, if your house burns down and the answer is, well, just have a second house, that might be a little too much for somebody. Right?
Yeah. It'd be nice if you could do that, but not everyone can, right?
Exactly. So, some people, I have 2 cars. So, I can, if one car doesn't work, I can go drive the other car. So it's not, you have, maybe it's just because I want 2 cars, but that's not the point, right? You still have to walk through those exercises with the customer and be like, hey, where are your weak links? Where will your business fall over? Because if your business falls over, I stop getting paid. and
Right.
I want to keep getting paid, and I want to keep your business going and your business successful.
Yep. Exactly. And the other thing I think, we've been talking about ransomware, and it's definitely a major risk to all businesses. But I think business owners need to understand it's not just about encryption anymore. All right. So it isn't about restoring data. If what a lot of the ransomware criminals are doing now is they're stealing the data before they're encrypting it. So if you think about, you're a healthcare organization, someone's gotten your patients and they're threatening to release that. I mean, that's a huge HIPAA violation. And talk about that breach notification, talking about the expense of notifying all those patients or all those customers, and what about the reputation damage? What if there was like that you have information that they stole that could really hurt you, from a reputation. You're not protecting, a customer's data. It could be intellectual property. It could be patents. It could be, manufacturing process. It could be the secret sauce to make your hot wings or whatever that is. That becomes a data breach then. And that the impact of that, you can't restore your data. You restore your data, you still need, sometimes you can't mitigate that. I mean, a lot of companies say, we'll pay, so you don't, expose that. But are you going to trust the criminals that they really are not going to do it? Or they're going to come back and say, oh, we like that $50,000 payment. Now we want $100,000, So ransomware is no longer just about encryption. It's about a data breach. It's about stealing data and extortion of releasing that data. And I think it's very important for business owners to know that that's the case.
Having the professionals know what they're talking about involved is critical. If I get into your system, it's game over, right? And I tell my clients this: you can't. People talk about good backups are the solution. You need to make it that they don't get in because of that, right? If I get inside a system, I might do hardware compromise. Maybe it's old. There's hardware attacks I can do on the CPU, on the controllers, on the drives. There was a UK hospital that got ransomware, exactly like you were talking about. They got ransomware. They paid the ransomware. They didn't clean their systems effectively. 4 months later, the same attackers came back, ransomware again. They paid it again. They didn't clean their systems effectively. Then they got ransomware a third time in 1 year, and the UK government said, "That's it. You're in receivership. You're ours now. Like we're fixing this. This is horrible." And they're going to exfiltrate that data through Discord, through Teams, through whatever you're using.
Yep.
To
be
get that data
FTP,
out.
it could be FTP, it could be, anything. And then you have that issue. What do we do? And then, that's why when you start to look at this cyber insurance of having data forensics, okay, because what did they steal and what didn't they steal? Right? Who do we need to notify? And then when you start to, again, if you start to look at breach notification, every state has a different requirement. You need a law firm to do that. So that's where cyber insurance is so important, because if you don't have it, who's going to do all this? And and how much is it going to cost? That's where the hundreds of thousands of dollars that I don't think anyone's sitting around, you haven't been able to collect revenue. And now you have to go pay hundreds of thousands of dollars out of your pocket for breach notification. It drives businesses out of business. And that's where cyber insurance could at least give you that safety net, provide those resources and that financial help.
Art, I've got one final question for you. And this is the zinger that I throw at everybody at the end.
Yep.
You are now officially the cybersecurity czar of America.
Oh, God.
Whatever you dictate happens.
Okay.
Do you require cybersecurity insurance? Would that be the first thing you did, is turn cybersecurity insurance like car insurance? It is mandatory. You must have it.
I think, to tell you the truth, I would recommend, as the cybersecurity czar, I would recommend that every company have cyber insurance. But I think what I would really do is I would focus on employees. That's, I would require all employees to be trained. I would require all employees to understand scams and phishing, because if we fix the human problem of cybersecurity, I think we fix cybersecurity. We focus a lot on the technology aspect, but it's those employees. So that's the first thing I would do. But I would highly recommend everyone have, if I can do two things, I would say fix your employees and train them and strengthen them. And then also make sure that you have cyber insurance and protect yourself. This way you have both covered right there, protection and then your safety net at the end.
The layer 8 problem, as some people in the cybersecurity world refer to them as, your users that are, they, at the end of the day, if something happens to their business, they're just going to go get another job. You're the one holding the bag as the business owner or the executive. And that's a huge problem. So thank you. That's a great, especially for somebody who's selling cybersecurity insurance, to not mandate cybersecurity insurance. There's your takeaway, people. Cybersecurity training. You have to train your people. You have to educate them. Or you're like, why? You're paying the receptionist to answer all your emails for you. They're the personal assistant. You're not opening them all. They are. And their password is princess123 at home, and it's princess123 at work.
I mean, a great analogy of that would be, okay, we'll just put I look at cyber insurance as a safety net. It's like, but we don't need any windows, so people could just fall out and, no protections. We'll just let them fall onto the the net of the, before they hit the concrete. No, you need to secure your building, and then you also need to have your safety net. So Richard, it's been great talking to you. I really enjoyed it. And hopefully the audience really got some insight into why you need cyber insurance, and InsSkyber can help with that. If they want to do some insurance reviews, we'd be more than happy to guide them and take a look at what they have and potentially what they need.
What's the best email address for people to reach out to the folks at InsSkyber?
Yes, so it's artg@InsSkyber, InsKYBER.com, artg@InsSkyber.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I write a lot about cyber insurance, cybersecurity. You can follow me, and hopefully I'm giving some insight that may help them as well.
I think this has been very helpful because there's specifics that most people aren't going to take the time to ask, and they want to get the education because it's their business. It's critical for them. So
absolutely.
Thanks a lot again, Art. I hope you have a great time. Enjoy the weekend.
All right.
And don't click those links.
Exactly. Take care, Richard. Thank you.